The mic on the screen.
Yes, you're good.
All right, all praises. We're back, and we're going to continue with Shaul's Israelite letters, the book of Romans, part 1. We're continuing on. So we were showing you how a Hebrew Israelite became known as a Grecian or a Greek. And if you're missing this part of history, world history, specifically Israelite history, you're going to be lost when you get to Paul's or Shaul's letters. If you don't know how the Hebrews became Grecians, all of Paul's letters is going to confuse you. So, to recap what we went over so far, we know that Shaul was not commissioned to go to strange nations. Shaul was writing letters to scattered Israelites. We went over the terms dispersed and scattered and showed you how when the Bible uses the word scattered and dispersed, it's referring to the 12 tribes of Israel. We began to show you how when the Greek Empire, when Alexander the Great conquered the world, he died, and then his 4 generals of his army divided up his empire, and we had Greek soldiers now ruling different parts of the Eastern world. The king or the Greek king that was ruling Judah or Israel, his name was Antioch or Antioch. And this king says everybody's going to have the same God. Everybody's going to be universal. Everyone's going to have a universal God. And I'm emphasizing universal because those of you who do the research and study, you know universal is what Catholicism means. So the Romans were not doing anything new when they took over the world. The Romans were continuing to push a universal doctrine. It's just the Romans got a little bit of slicker and they put the title Christ on top of their idol worship. But let's stick to the Greek Empire for now. And let's go back to the book of Maccabees. And we're going to show you how the Greek kingdoms or the Greek kings made us, our ancestors, forsake all Hebrew customs. If you were Israelite and you tried to keep any of the Hebraic customs given to us by the Most High and confirmed by Moses, you were killed and destroyed. So we're going to pick this up, and this is First Maccabees chapter 1, and we're going to pick it up at verse 51. I'm sorry, this is First Maccabees chapter 1, and we're going to pick it up at verse 50. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Verse 52. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land. Verse 53. And drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor or help. So those of our ancestors who didn't want to take on Greek culture, they flew, they ran. And they ran into the desert and they ran into the mountains. Now, just with that piece of information, that makes more sense when you come and read Messiah's words when he's telling them, I believe it's in the book of John, he says, who did you go into the wilderness to see? A reed shaking in the leaf or shaking in the wind? So if you don't know the history of the Israelite nation, when you're reading these scriptures or these sentences, it's going over your head, but you're sitting in church saying amen, hallelujah, and you don't have a clue what's going on. You have no reason or you have no understanding why Christ asked them, who did you go out to the wilderness to see? You don't know who was in the wilderness. You don't know how they got to the wilderness, and you don't know why they went to the wilderness. But when you get the missing records of the Hebrew Israelites, you find out that our ancestors ran into the wilderness, into the desert, to get away from the Greeks and to get away from all wickedness. That's why they went to the wilderness. So let's finish this up. He says, verse 54. Now the 15th day of the month of Casleu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And they have rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, and burnt them with fire. So these Greeks who came into the land, after they subdued our forefathers and made them worship idols and stopped circumcising their children, they started to find our records, the Torah, any histories they could find, and they ripped them into pieces and burnt them. So that's why we have so many missing fragments of our histories. That's why when you don't have a full understanding, people could tell you, oh, your Bible is contradicting themselves. Our records don't contradict themselves. It's that you have missing pieces, and if you don't have a Hebraic understanding of the Bible, you're totally lost. When you take on Greek ideology and Greek culture, you can't understand anything in the Bible. And these people inside these churches can tell you that, oh, the law is done away with. Oh, you don't have to keep these days no more. They can beguile you with this rhetoric or this doctrine because they don't have a full understanding of the Hebraic way of life. All praise to our Father for increasing knowledge in the last days. So let's continue on. Again, if you're just tuning in, we're showing you how when you come to the New Testament and you're reading Apostle Shaul's letters, if you don't have an understanding of what a Grecian is or what a Gentile is, or you don't understand the context of Paul's writings, you're going to think Paul is talking to strange nations. You're going to continue to believe the Christian doctrine that Shaul was sent to foreign nations to bring everybody under the sun into Christianity, to gather everybody under the blood of Christ. That doctrine sounds good, and I wish it was true. I can't make these books say what they don't say. Shaul's mission was not to gather everybody under the sun unto the faith of Christ. Paul's mission was to gather the lost sheep of Israel. And y'all willing, we're going to go over his letters, letter by letter, and show you and prove it to you so you can see it for yourself. So now, with that piece of information showing you how the Hebrew Israelites became Greeks or became Grecians, now we can start to get some understanding of Paul's letters. Because if you try to read Paul's letters without understanding the difference between a true Greek and an actual Grecian, or you don't understand what a Hebrew Gentile is versus a real Gentile, Apostle Shaul's letters are foreign to you. The whole way of Hebraic thinking is Greek to the Greek mind. It's just, you just can't get an understanding of it. So let's continue on. So this is further evidence that when you are defeated, you must adopt the gods of the conquerors. The Greeks came in and conquered the Israelites, and the Greeks forced them to take on their idol worship. It's just, that's how the ancients did things. There's no ancient kingdom that's going to worship your God and your whole nation is in servitude. It makes no sense. I mean, think about it. In today's context, you're going to go to, let's put it in boxing terms. You just seen the champ defeat your people. Who is it? Let's just use Mike Tyson, the famous one. So Mike Tyson just knocked out your uncle, and you want to be a boxer. You're going to go to your uncle because he's your uncle and ask him to teach you how to box. Well, that could be helpful, But if you had a choice and had access, you would want to go to Mike Tyson and ask Mike Tyson to teach you how to box because he just defeated your uncle. It's the same thing with the ancient kingdoms. No ancient kingdom is going to even entertain you and what you have to say about your God, and you're a slave. You're a captive. My nation has you in captivity, and you want to teach me about the greatness of your God? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So let's recap before we continue. So we went over the fact that in ancient times, when you were conquered or defeated by another nation, that meant their God is stronger than your God, and now your God is a lesser God. With this piece of information, we could have some kind of understanding that Paul wouldn't waste his time writing to true Romans because the Romans' God has them on top of the world. But now we're going to show you how, or we're going to prove to you how Hebrew Israelites were living inside the kingdom of Rome. We had Hebrew Israelites living in the actual country of Rome, and we had Hebrew Israelites scattered throughout all the Roman provinces. That's who Paul was writing to. So let's get into some ancient manuscripts. So I'm going to read. I need Josephus. I showed you how ancient kingdoms conquered another kingdom, and their God was your God now. You had to take on their God. But that was under the Greek Empire. When the Roman Empire started to come about, the Roman Empire defeated the Greek Empire. And when the Roman Empire came to power, it was a new philosophy brought upon the world. So we had a changing of guards when the Roman Empire took control. We had a new sheriff in town. Now I'm going to read to you some ancient history to show you how Rome conducted themselves when they took over the world and they defeated all the Greek kings. I'm going to show you how they conducted themselves. So the first piece I'm going to read is out of the Apocryphal books. I'm going to read to you First Maccabees chapter 15, actually First Maccabees 8. First Maccabees chapter 8. And I'm going to show you how Rome changed the customs. So I just spent the last 5 minutes showing you how foreign nations, when they conquered another nation, they either made that new nation worship their gods, or they would leave that conquered nation, the slaves. You can serve your God because your God is not greater than my God because you're my slave. So that was the two choices you had. But when the Greeks came in, the Greeks said, no, you're not going to worship your God. You're not going to keep your customs. We're all going to have the same God, and we're all going to practice the same thing. And if you kept any Hebrew customs, you were killed. Now, once the Greek Empire was taken over or pushed out by the Romans, we had a changing of the guards. So let's read 1 Maccabees chapter 8. It says, this is 1 Maccabees chapter 8, verse 1. Now, Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. And that they were men of great valor. It was told him also of their wars and noble acts, and all they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute. So Judas, one of our Israelite forefathers, he's starting to hear about the Romans. The Romans are coming to power. Now, if you go back and read Daniel chapter 8, you'll get some understanding. Daniel saw all the coming kingdoms. He was under the Babylonian kingdom. He then was transferred unto the Persian and Mede empire. But then he saw the coming Grecian kingdom, and that fourth beast, Daniel said, was so wicked he could not describe or put a name on that fourth fourth beast. We now know Rome is that fourth beast. And Judas, one of our ancestors, he's now hearing about the Roman Empire and how they're starting to conquer and they're starting to gain control or win over the Greek kingdoms. So let's drop down to verse 4. And it says, and that by their policy and patience they had conquered all the place, though it were very far from them, and the kings also that came against them from the uttermost parts of the earth, till they had discomforted them and given them a great overthrow, so that the rest did give them tribute every year. So the Roman Empire is taking over, and all those kings they're conquering are now paying them taxes. They're paying tribute to the Romans. Let's drop down to verse 9. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them. Again, go back and replay the video. This can't be the true Grecians, meaning the Hebrews who living as Gentiles. It's not them who trying to destroy them. These are the Greeks. These are real Greeks who are in power, who don't want to give up the control of the world. They want to come and now destroy the Romans. So I'll read this again. I'm reading from 1 Maccabees chapter 8. This is verse 9. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them. And I'll drop down to, instead of all I want, let's drop down to verse 17. So now listen very closely to verse 17. In consideration of these things, Judas chose Eponymus, the son of John, the son of Achos, and Jason, the son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome. So Judas is sending some of our priests to go to Rome. Listen to this. And to make a league of amity and confederacy with them, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them. So Judas is sending our priests to go talk to the Romans. Go make a league, a friendship with the Romans, that they could come and take these Greeks out of our lands and take this yoke, this Grecian yoke from off our necks. This is what's happening here. He says, this is verse 19. I'm sorry, let me go back up. Let me slow down. This is 1 Maccabees chapter 8, verse 18. And to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, for they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude. They went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spake and said, verse 20, Judas Maccabeus with his brethren and the people of the Jews have sent us to you to make a confederacy and peace with you, and that we might be registered with confederates. That we might be registered your confederates and friends. Verse 21. So that matter pleased the Romans well. And this is the copy of the epistle which the Senate wrote back again in tables of brass and sent to Jerusalem, that they might have by them a memorial of peace and confederacy. So our Israelite forefathers, the priests, traveled way across the Rome and presented themselves to the Roman Senate and said, we come in the name of our leaders and we want to make friendship with you. And the Roman says, hey, that's good. Because Rome, they had a changing of the guards. Rome says, we're going to conquer the world, but everybody who wants to be our friends, they can be part of our empire. And that's when things began to change for the Hebrew Israelites. So this is the letter that Rome wrote back to tell the nations. Good success be to the Romans and to the people of the Jews, by sea and by land forever. The sword also and the enemy be far from them. If there come first any war upon the Romans or any of their confederates throughout all their dominion, the people of the Jews shall help them, as at the time shall be appointed, with all their heart. Neither shall they give anything unto them that make war upon them, or aid them with victuals, weapons, money, or ships, as it seemed good unto the Romans, but that they should keep their covenants without taking anything therefore. So part of this treaty that they're drawing up is saying the Jews are going to help the Romans in any of the Roman territories. When any of the Roman territories go to war, the Jews or the Hebrew Israelites are going to fight with the Romans. And if by some reason the Hebrew Israelites can't help them physically, well, don't help the enemy. Don't help my enemies with any food, money, or clothing. So pretty much my enemies are your enemies and your enemies are my enemies. Let's read the second part of this treaty between the Hebrew Israelites and Rome. He says, verse 27, in the same manner also, if war come first upon the nation of the Jews, the Romans shall help them with all their heart, according as the time shall be appointed them. So this is ancient history showing you that when Rome took over the world and defeated those Greeks, they made a friendship with the Hebrew Israelites. More specifically, the last tribe that was left in Israel was the tribe of Judah. We had bits and pieces of the other tribes around, but the majority of our ancestors were from the tribe of Judah. And Rome and the Jews, the real Jews, not these fake Jews, Rome and the real Israelites made a covenant that we was going to have each other's backs. If you don't have this understanding, when you read Shaul's letters to the Romans, you're gonna be completely confused, and you're gonna continue to believe this church doctrine or this Christianity that Paul was sent to win everybody under the sun who loves Christ or Jesus into the household of faith. It sounds good. Even so many concerts. It packs out many churches, even today on this pagan SUN day. It sounds good. It's just not true. It doesn't match the Bible. So now, with that bit of information, I'm going to go into a first century historian named Josephus. This is the complete works of Josephus. You can find this online as a PDF, or you can buy it on Amazon, maybe about 25 bucks. Josephus, if you Google him, they have whitewashed him. But Josephus gives you his pedigree, and he runs down his line all the way back to Aaron. Josephus is actually a righteous priest from the line of Aaron. He's not European, even though he did take on a Roman family name. So let me read to you some history from Josephus, who gives us a first-hand account. And I'm reading out of the book of the Antiquities of the Jews, and this is page, in my collection, it's page 378, chapter 10. This is Antiquity of the Jews, chapter 10, and it starts on page 378 in my collection. So, I just read to you out of the Apocrypha books how the Israelites made a friendship or treaty with the Romans when they were taking over the world. So this is Josephus' account. It says, the honors that were paid the Jews and the league that were made by the Romans and other nations with them. So he says, now when Caesar was come to Rome, he was ready to sail into Africa to fight against Scipio and Cato, when Hyrcanus sent ambassadors to him, and by them desired that he would ratify the league of friendship and mutual alliance which was between them. So one of our ancestors is writing to Caesar, asking him to reaffirm the treaty between the Hebrews and the Romans. So I want to drop down. He says, and it seems to me to be necessary here to give an account of all the honors that the Romans and their emperors paid to our nation, the Hebrews, and of the leagues of mutual assistance they have made with it, and that all the rest of mankind may know what regards the kings of Asia and Europe have had to us, and that they have abundantly satisfied of us of our courage and fidelity. So check this out. For whereas many will not believe what has been written about us by the Persians and the Macedonians, because those writings are not everywhere to be met with, nor do lie in public places, but among us ourselves and certain other barbarous nations, while there is no contradiction to be made against the decrees of the Romans. So he's saying the other records or the other pacts we have with the other nations, they wasn't made known to the public. So some people can contradict or say those treaties never existed. But the Romans, they had another way of doing things. The Romans made public decrees. They wrote things in brass and published them inside their courthouses. So our ancestor is writing to Caesar, asking him to reaffirm the treaty we have with the Romans, so that the whole world and all your countries that you're conquering would know that the Hebrew Israelites and the Romans are friends. And if you come against the Romans, you have to come against the Israelites. And if you come against the Israelites, you're coming against the Romans. Now listen to the countries that this letter was sent to. So he says, let's see. So it says, Caius Julius Caesar, Imperator and High Priest and Dictator the second time, to the magistrates, senate, and people of Zidon, sendeth greetings. If you be in health, it is well. I also and the army are well. I have sent you a copy of that decree registered on the tables, which concerns Hyrcanus, the son of Alexander, the high priest and ethnarch of the Jews, that it may be laid up among the public records. And I will that it be openly proposed in a table of brass, both in Greek and in Latin. It is as follows. I, Julius Caesar, Imperator the second time and High Priest, have made this decree with the approbation of the Senate, whereas Hyrcanus, the son of Alexander, the Jew, have demonstrated his fidelity and diligence about our affairs. And this both now and in former times, both in peace and in war, as many of our generals have borne witness, and came to our assistance in the last Alexandrian war with 1,500 soldiers, and when he was sent by me to Mithras, showed himself superior in valor to all the rest of that army. So Julius Caesar is writing, confirming that our ancestors kept their word and sent soldiers to help the Romans fight against the kingdom of Egypt when it was under the Greek rule. So when Rome invaded Egypt, our ancestors helped the Romans take down the Greek Empire in Egypt. So, but I want you to pay attention to where he sent this letter to. This copy is going to the people of Zidon. Now listen to the other countries that he sent this to. He says that discourse with him about a league of friendship and mutual assistance, and that a table of brass containing the premises be openly proposed in the capital and at Zidon, at Tyre, at Escalon, and in the temple, engraven in Roman and Greek letters, that this decree may also be communicated to the quaestors and praetors of the several cities and to the friends of the Jews, and that the ambassadors may have presents made them, and that these decrees be sent everywhere. So Julius Caesar is sending this confirmation throughout all the Roman empires. All the countries that the Greeks once ruled are now being ruled by the Romans. And Julius Caesar is confirming to all these Roman provinces that these Jews, these Hebrews, are now our friends And if you touch them, you're touching Julius Caesar. So I want to get to the point to show you that we had Hebrew Israelites living in Rome and throughout all the Roman provinces. And these Hebrew Israelites who are living in the country of Rome and in all these Roman provinces, these are the Hebrew Israelites. These are the Grecians. These are the Gentiles that Apostle Shaul is writing to. He's not writing to strange nations. So I can continue on. This whole chapter just confirms this whole thing. So let me find the next city that he sends this letter to. So the other city says, Julius Caius, praetor of Rome, to the magistrates, senate, and people of the Parthenians, sends greetings. The Jews of Delos and some other Jews the Jews of Delos and some other Jews that sojourn there in the presence of your ambassadors signify to us that by decree of yours you forbid them to make use of the customs of their forefathers and their way of sacred worship. So now, this is what I want you to pay attention to, beloved. Julius Caesar has sent out a decree to his whole empire. That's Rome and all their conquering countries and cities. He's made it be known that the Hebrew Israelites, specifically now called Jews, are our friends. Now he's writing to this one city saying, our friends the Jews have told me that you're forbidding them to practice the customs of their forefathers. You're telling them they can't practice the customs of the Hebrew Israelites. This is what Julius Caesar is saying. So he says this, now it does not please me that such decrees should be made against our friends and our confederates, whereby they are forbidden to live according to their own customs, or to bring in contributions or common suppers and holy festivals, while they are not forbidding to do so even at Rome itself. He says, it doesn't sit well with me that you are writing decrees making it illegal for the Hebrew Israelites to practice the customs of their own forefathers. Then he goes on to say, we don't even forbid them to do it in Rome. I'll read it again. This is proof that Hebrew Israelites were living in Rome. How did Hebrew Israelites get into Rome? It's covered in the first book of Maccabees. When the Greeks were in rulership, our ancestors ran into Rome to get away from the Greeks. The Greeks were killing us for practicing our customs. But the Romans were friendly and loving people and said, hey, you can practice your customs. So now Julius Caesar is writing to these people saying, look, we don't even forbid them to practice their own customs in Rome. So why are you doing it? So he says, for even Caius Caesar, our imperator and council, in that decree wherein he forbade the Baconial rioters to meet in the city, yet did he permit these Jews and these only both to bring in their contributions and to make their common suppers. So many of us don't know inside the Christian church, when you partake in Easter, you put those wreaths, those ivy Christmas wreaths on your door, all that mistletoe. These are pagan rituals done to the pagan god Bacchus. So he just said Caesar finally outlawed the Baconial contributions. Caesar made it illegal to continue the customs that was paid, or tribute that was paid to this idol Bacchus, known as Bacchanal. Well, he says, I forbade Bacchanal, but I let the Jews keep their customs. So Caesar is saying, I let the Jews keep their customs, and I let the Jews keep their customs alone. He's the only one. See, Julius Caesar only gave the Jews permission to keep their customs. That's what he's saying here. But what I want you to pay attention to, he says, I didn't forbid this even at Rome. This is proof that Hebrew Israelites was living inside Rome. Hebrew Israelites were living inside Rome. So let's continue. I'm almost finished. We're going to wrap this up and continue part 2 later. So let me get one more instance to show you that Hebrew Israelites was living in Rome. Our forefathers were scattered all over. So here's a portion, and I'm going to show you how you had Hebrew Israelites who became Roman citizens. Hebrew Israelites became Roman citizens. So even if you didn't live in Rome, you lived in one of the provinces or countries that was under Roman authority, you were a Roman citizen. It's just like someone from the United States, born and raised in the United States, and they move abroad. They could be living abroad, but unless they denounce their citizenship, they're still a United States citizen. So we had Hebrew Israelites living all across Europe who are citizens of Rome. So let me read it to you. It says, and these were the concessions that Dolabella made to our nation when Hyrcanus sent an embassy to him. But Lucius, the consul's decree ran thus: I have at my tribunal set these Jews who are citizens of Rome and follow the Jewish religious rites and yet live at Ephesus free from going into the army on account of the superstition they are under. So what is this saying? Two things. It says, but Lucius, the consul's decree ran thus: I have at my tribunal set these Jews who are citizens of Rome and follow the Jewish religious rites and yet live at Ephesus free from going into the army. So he's saying they're Hebrew Israelites, they're Jews who are Roman citizens but yet live in Ephesus. He says, I'm setting them free. I released them from the requirement of joining the army based on their beliefs. They use the word superstition here because to the Romans, how we worship an invisible God of heaven, it seemed superstitious to them. Like that Stevie Wonder song. When you believe in things you don't understand, it seems like superstition. So the Romans says, there are Jews who are Roman citizens, but they live at Ephesus. They are free or no longer required to join the army. Let me get you another example. Another point here. This says, while Marcus Piso, the lieutenant, lived in our city, who was also appointed over the choice of the soldiers, he called us and many of the other citizens and gave order that if there be here any Jews who are Roman citizens, no one is to give them any disturbance about going into the army, because Cornelius Lentulus, the consul, freed the Jews from going into the army. Could this be Cornelius the centurion? He's saying, listen, there are Jews here who are Roman citizens. No one is to give them any trouble about joining the army, because Cornelius, and his last name appears to be Lentulus, has freed them. Could this be Cornelius the centurion? Could this be Cornelius the centurion who have made it illegal to force a Jew or a Hebrew to join the army. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Another point here. He says, Lucius Antonius, the son of Marcus, vice quaestor and vice praetor to the magistrates, senate, and the people of Sardinians, sends greetings. Those Jews that are our fellow citizens of Rome came to me and demonstrated that they had an assembly of their own according to the laws of their forefathers, and from the beginning, as also a place of their own, wherein they determined their suits and controversies with one another. Upon their petition, therefore, to me, that these might be lawful for them, I gave order that these privileges be preserved, and they be permitted to do accordingly. We're seeing a changing of the guards. When the Greeks came over, they destroyed us and forbid any of us to keep our Torah or the law, statutes, and commandments. If the Greeks caught you trying to practice Hebrew customs, your whole family was killed. Now the Romans are in control of the world. The Romans have destroyed and defeated the Greek empires throughout all of Asia and Europe. The Romans are now letting the world know and all their provinces know that the Jews or the Hebrews are our friends. Not only are they our friends, they are Roman citizens. They may not live in the country of Rome, but the way the Romans do things, if you are living in the cities under our control, you are a Roman citizen. So the Caesars and all the councils, I don't know, in America, you got the vice president, you got the secretary of state. Julius Caesar has let all his cabinet members know, and his cabinet members are pushing all these decrees to the whole world, their whole Roman Empire, letting them know the Jews, the Israelites, are to be free to practice their own customs. They are to be free to gather in their own assemblies, and they are free to keep the customs of their forefathers. If anyone gives them problems, they are now enemies of Julius Caesar and the Senate of Rome. These are forgotten histories that if you don't understand this or you don't come to the knowledge of this, when you open up the New Testament and start reading Shaul's letters, you're going to be lost. I don't care how long you've been going to church. I don't care how many seminaries you went to. I don't care how many letters behind your name. I don't care how many people go to your church. I don't care how much dancing you do. I don't care how many praise breaks you have. I don't care how many times you high step over churches and you run around the church. If you don't have a complete history of the Israelite nation, Paul's letters are going to confuse you. You're going to continue believing in a false doctrine. It's just the bottom line, the way it is. It's just the way it is. So I could go on and on. These records don't stop. But hopefully you can replay this at your own leisure and take the time to do your own study. Remember, family, I always say, do not take my word for any of this. Take what I'm saying and get alone and do the research. See if you could tear it apart. See if there's other ancient records that are giving contradictions. And if if you do find information, send me an inbox. Email me, tourgroup12@gmail.com. You could drop a line in the comment section. I'm not a private man. I'm not doing this for self-glory. I'm not one of these ones who want to teach behind closed doors, or you can drop your information inside the public comments. I'm not like that. I'm not prideful. If you think this is wrong, you think this is inaccurate, drop it in the public comments. We can have a dialogue. We can take it offline. This is not about embarrassing people. This is not about chopping heads. This is teaching truth for truth's sake. And this is about awakening the 12 tribes of Israel that's been scattered abroad as promised in Deuteronomy 28. So I hope you have enough of information to start your research and to do things according to the book, to start your own studies. I mean, I can go on and show you how there were Israelites who are now Roman citizens. Let me read one more. I'll read one more. This says, again, this is the complete work of Josephus. The complete works of Josephus. I hope you can see this. A first century historian. He was a Hebrew Israelite. He was from the tribe of Levi. He was a priest. This is the last one, and we'll wrap this up. So I'm just going to show you how Hebrew Israelites were Roman citizens. Hebrew Israelites were Roman citizens, and these are the Romans that Paul is writing to. This is who Paul is writing to. So this is it. This is the decree of the Ephesians. When Menophiles was Praetorianus on the first day of the month, Artemisius, this decree was made by the people. Nicanor, the son of Euphemus, pronounced it upon the representation of the praetors. Since the Jews that dwell in this